My half-brother said that kids with different fathers don't count as family until he needed my kidney and I said ... My name never sounded right when he said it. It always came out like a joke, something to fill silence at the dinner table, or to draw a smirk from our father when I tried to speak. I remember one Christmas dinner in particular. The whole family was there. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people who barely remembered my birthday. And him, sitting at the head of the table like he owned the bloodline, he raised his glass, laughed too loudly, and said, "Let's toast to family, real family, not the part-time ones." Everyone chuckled. My stepmom coughed to hide a grin. Even my father just lowered his head. And I just sat there blinking slowly, gripping the edge of my chair like it would help me stay grounded. That night, as the dishes were being cleared, he caught me alone in the hallway and leaned in. "You know, don't take it personally. It's not your fault your dad had a practice round before me." Then he walked off before I could even respond, but I never forgot, because that wasn't the first time. It started when we were kids. I got his hand-me-downs, but not his room. I got his old backpack, but not the spot at the breakfast table. When my school had a father-son event, our dad went with him. Always, I wasn't even on the list. "We didn't know you wanted to go," they'd say. I stopped asking by age 10. Later, it was the inheritance talk. Our grandfather died, and the will reading came with a surprise. Everything went to my half-brother. "Makes sense," someone said. "He's the real grandson." I was standing right there. No one corrected them. So I left. I packed my things and disappeared from family gatherings. Didn't answer texts. Didn't show up for holidays. Years passed. I built a life without them, piece by piece, in silence. No updates, no Facebook posts. No apologies. Then came the call. It was my mother, the one who married my dad after my birth mom passed. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "It's your brother.
He's sick. It's serious.
He needs a kidney. They say you might be a match." I remember holding the phone, the silence in my apartment pressing against my chest. I didn't answer right away. Just listened to her breathing. Then, like a reflex, I asked, "Why me? Doesn't he have real family?" She paused. The line went quiet. Then she whispered, "Because you're the only one who's a match." That's when I knew that no matter how many times they excluded me, belittled me, erased me, my blood was still the one that could save him. Funny, isn't it? The one who was just half was suddenly whole enough to be needed. I didn't say yes. Not yet, but I booked a flight. I showed up at the hospital, and when he saw me tired, thinner than I remembered, with wires taped to his arms and a nurse adjusting the machines behind him, he tried to smile. "Didn't think you'd come," he said. Then, with a smug grin, added, "Guess you're finally ready to be part of the family." I said nothing, just sat down, because he thought this was a story of forgiveness. He had no idea what was coming. It wasn't just the words he said out loud that stayed with me. It was all the quiet, calculated ways they made sure I never forgot I was only half a brother. Half present, half real. At Christmas, the gifts were always lined up. On the couch, his stacked high, mine modest and last minute. Family pictures always had me on the edge, physically and emotionally. Sometimes I wasn't even asked to pose. Other times I was there but later edited out when the photos made it to frames or Facebook albums. I was the guest in my own bloodline. Vacations came and went. Disney, the mountains. A cruise once, I heard. Always announced after they returned. Like it was some casual afterthought. I stopped asking where they were going. The answer was always a laugh or a vague, "Just us this time." And us never meant me, but what burned deepest wasn't the everyday slights. It was the moment. That felt like a verdict. I was 19 when our grandfather died.
He wasn't affectionate, but he was fair, or so I thought.
At the reading of the will, everyone sat in stiff silence while the lawyer listed names and amounts. My name wasn't among them. Not even a mention, not even a token gesture. Just a pause, a glance in my direction, and then it moved on, as if I didn't exist. As if I wasn't born into any part of that legacy. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, not even trying to hide it. "Makes sense." His blood was different. I felt the world tilt. Not in anger, but in confirmation. The kind that settles in your gut like lead. The kind that tells you this isn't a misunderstanding. This is structure. This is how it's always been, and how it will continue to be. I remember my mother squeezing my hand that day. Too late, too quietly. Like an apology made of breath, not conviction. She didn't fight for me then. She never really did. Just enough to ease her conscience. Never enough to change anything. So I started counting. Not gifts or inheritance, but moments. The ones that made me less. The ones where I smiled on cue but felt nothing. The birthdays with forgotten cakes. The graduations with empty chairs. The hospital visit they didn't make when I had surgery. I counted them not to wallow, but to remember. Because one day I knew they'd come needing something. And when they did, I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I would just reach for the same scale they used all those years, one that weighed love by genetics and family by convenience, and I'd let them see what fairness really felt like. There was no scene, no late-night blow-up, no dramatic speech at the dinner table. One morning I woke up, packed my things, and didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. They didn't even notice I was gone until days later, and even then no one called. That silence confirmed everything I'd been feeling for years. I wasn't family. I was tolerated. A fixture in the house, not a member of it. I moved to a city where no one knew my name. Got a job stocking shelves at night and cleaning offices during the day. It was exhausting, but it was mine. No one sneered when I came home tired. No one asked why I needed extra shifts. And for the first time in my life, every dollar I earned stayed in my pocket, not shared with someone who treated me like a burden. I enrolled in a community college, scraping together tuition with used books and vending machine dinners. I wasn't brilliant. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted peace. A life where I wasn't constantly proving I deserved to exist at the same table. Years passed. Seasons blurred into one another. I built something small, quiet, and stable, a job that paid better. A one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture and curtains I actually liked. Nobody told me the color was wrong. Nobody made jokes about how I decorated. I didn't have much, but I had freedom. And no one was watching me from across the room, waiting for me to mess up. Then came the call. I almost didn't answer. The number was still saved under Mom, but it had been years. I hesitated, thumb hovering before curiosity won. Her voice hadn't changed. Still clipped, like she was always in the middle of something more important. But this time, her tone was different. Softer. Not warm, but uncertain. She said my brother, your brother, she still said, as if the word meant anything, had been diagnosed with a rare condition. Kidney failure, aggressive. The doctors were looking for a match. She didn't ask outright, not at first. Just mentioned the blood type.
The odds.
The desperation. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak like it was just another favor, like asking for a ride or a loan. When she finally paused, waiting for me to say something, I said I'd think about it. Then I hung up, and I sat there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, not angry, not sad, just full. Full of every Christmas dinner where I sat at the kids' table. Full of every time he introduced me as his mom's kid from before. Full of every shared moment. That was never really shared, only tolerated. They needed me now. After years of pushing me to the edge, they were pulling me back, not out of love, but out of necessity, and I knew exactly what to do. I would go. I would be kind. I would smile and nod and play the part. Because sometimes the best way to deliver justice is to let them believe it's forgiveness. Just long enough. When I stepped into that fluorescent-lit room, he looked surprised, but not in a grateful way. More like someone who just realized their backup plan might actually work. He was thinner, paler, a shell of the arrogant man I used to know. But somehow the smugness hadn't completely left his face. He stretched out his hand like we were old friends reconnecting. I shook it. Firm, but without warmth. My mother was there, sitting by the window with a look I couldn't read. Guilt? Desperation? Or just exhaustion from having to pretend we were. Still a family? She offered a smile, one of those tight-lipped ones she used when she didn't want to explain anything. We made small talk. He told me about the treatments, the doctors, how the waiting list could take years. He kept saying things like, "It's crazy how life works," and "We were never that close, but blood is blood, right?" I let him talk. Let him fill the air with nervous optimism, like this was some miracle reunion brought on by tragedy. I didn't interrupt. Then, mid-sentence, he looked at me and said it. That one sentence that shattered any illusion of change. "At least now you get to prove you're useful for something." He said it with a chuckle, like it was just another joke between brothers. But I saw it in his eyes. He meant it. That same condescension, the same smirk he wore when he excluded me from games, holidays, and memories. In that moment, nothing had changed. Not really. I wasn't a brother. I was a tool. A walking organ. A solution to his problem. And just like that, my decision was sealed, but I didn't show it. I smiled, nodded, asked questions about his medications and recovery plan. I even placed a gentle hand on his shoulder as I left, the way people do in movies when they've forgiven the unforgivable. He looked relieved, like he believed it. Like he thought he still held power over the outcome. The truth is, I had never held more power in my life. Over the next few days, I underwent every test they asked of me. Blood work, imaging, screenings, the full battery. The medical team was impressed by how eager I seemed, how cooperative. They said I was a perfect match. "You might have just saved your brother's life," one nurse told me, smiling wide like this was some feel-good segment on the local news. I smiled back, of course. I was playing the part. When the results were confirmed, everyone seemed to exhale. My mother hugged me for the first time in years. My brother called me man instead of him. The hospital staff said they'd schedule the surgery within the month. They praised my courage. They called me selfless. They didn't know. No one did, because revenge doesn't always wear a scowl. Sometimes it wears a mask of grace. Sometimes the best retribution starts with a yes and ends in silence. I told them I'd agree to the transplant. But under one condition, he had to sign a public statement acknowledging me as his brother. Not half, not kind of. Full, equal, blood, on paper, in front of witnesses. In the presence of a notary, he laughed at first. Thought I was joking, but I just stared at him. "You want my kidney," I said. "You can have it, just call me your brother." Not half, not maybe, just brother. And after a moment he agreed, smiling, smirking, like he thought he'd won. He had no idea what was coming next. The notary arrived 2 days later. My brother sat across the table in his living room, pale and jittery, but trying to keep his usual smirk intact. My mother hovered in the corner, wringing her hands like she was afraid to say anything wrong. The document was simple, a declaration of full familial recognition. It didn't grant me rights to inheritance or wealth or any material compensation. Just the words. Just the truth, written in black ink. I acknowledged my brother, my name, as my full sibling. He signed it quickly. He thought it was some emotional gesture. A symbolic moment that would make headlines later in the puff pieces. Estranged brothers reunite through organ donation. He even joked about it. "Guess this makes you officially part of the club, huh?" I didn't laugh. I just nodded and handed the document to the notary, who stamped it clean and final. With that, the process moved fast. The hospital called to say the surgery would be in 3 weeks. A reporter from the local paper reached out after someone leaked a story. I declined the interview, of course. But my brother didn't. He gave a whole statement, talking about redemption, forgiveness, how life gave us a second chance. He said he regretted everything and hoped our story would inspire other broken families to heal. He even posted a photo of us from that day with a caption, "Blood is thicker than ego." I didn't comment. I didn't share. I let him have his show, but while he posed for cameras and soaked in the praise, I was preparing for something else entirely. Revenge is not loud, it is not messy, it is patient. And mine had been simmering for a lifetime. I contacted a lawyer of my own. Not for lawsuits or threats, but to make sure every step I took was uncheckable. That when the moment came, No one could twist the narrative against me. I went through every legal detail. Because if I was going to say no, it would be the cleanest, most devastating no he had ever received. A week before the operation, my mother threw a dinner, to celebrate the miracle, she said. Neighbors came. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. People shook my hand like I was a saint. Some even cried, saying I was proof that family always wins. My brother gave a toast. He talked about how grateful he was, how brave I was, how our bond was stronger than the past. He called me his brother. Over and over again, loud, public, proud, and I let him because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about rewriting the roles. I had spent my whole life being quiet, being small, being tolerated. Now I was the hero. The savior. The one who said yes when no one else would have blamed me for saying no. But they didn't know the truth that night. I walked outside and stared up at the sky. I thought about everything he'd said, every birthday I wasn't invited to, every photo where I was cropped out, every time he told someone I was just a half. I thought about all of it. And I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel angry. I felt powerful, because for the first time in my life he needed me. And I was about to teach him what it meant to live with a decision, the kind that changes everything. The date was set. The story was written. The world was watching. And I was ready, not to save him, but to finally choose myself. The hospital looked like a movie set that morning. Reporters stood behind barricades. The lobby was full of flowers from people who didn't even know us. A nurse told me, smiling, "You're doing something really beautiful." I nodded. I was used to nodding. It was easier than explaining. My brother was already in pre-op when I arrived. Sedated, half awake, drifting between pain and hope. My mother clutched my arm and whispered, "I'm so proud of you. This will heal everything." And I just looked at her, really looked, wondering how many times she'd said similar words to him when I was younger. When I was excluded, when I was ignored, the surgeon shook my hand and said, "You're a rare match. This will change his life." And I agreed. It would, just not in the way anyone expected. I asked for a moment alone. The staff complied. I walked into his room, stood at his bedside. He was pale, hooked to machines, too weak to speak properly. But he smiled when he saw me. "You came," he murmured. "Knew you would." I sat down, took his hand gently.
And
For the first time in years, I spoke to him without hiding anything in my tone. "You know," I said softly, "I always wondered if one day you'd see me for who I really was. Not as half. Not as a reminder of a mistake. Just as a person. As your brother." His eyes fluttered, confused, unsure if this was part of some heartfelt goodbye. "And now," I continued, "you finally do. Because I made you."
he blinked. "I didn't come here to save you," I said. He frowned.
His mouth opened, but no words came. "I came to give you something far more valuable than a kidney," I whispered. "The truth." I stood, leaned in, closer, and said into his ear, "You are going to live the rest of your life knowing that the person you mocked, the one you said wasn't family, was the only one who could save you. And he chose not to." I turned to leave, but before I did, I added, "Enjoy being the hero in your fake story. Because mine is the one that ends with peace." Then I walked out. In the hallway, the press waited. The staff smiled. The cameras rolled, but I didn't go to the operating room. I walked straight past it, out the front doors, into the sunlight. Into my life. That afternoon I called the hospital and asked to speak with the attending physician. I told them calmly that I had changed my mind, that I would not be going through with the procedure, that I understood the consequences, and that my decision was final. My mother called 30 times. My aunt sent me voicemails crying. A cousin said I was cruel. But none of them ever called when I was left out. None of them ever defended me when I was just a half. The hospital released a statement. The donor had withdrawn for personal reasons. The surgery was cancelled. My brother's condition was stable, but he would need dialysis indefinitely. In the family group chat, I didn't say a word. Not until someone posted a meme about betrayal, clearly aimed at me. Then I typed slowly and deliberately, Blood may bind us, but it doesn't obligate us. And I left the chat. With anger, but with freedom. The morning after I canceled the surgery, my phone was a battlefield. Missed calls, voicemails, long messages filled with guilt tactics. Some begged, some accused, and some outright insulted me. But none of them surprised me. It was always easier to demand kindness from the person you never bothered to understand. My mom sent a voice message that started with tears and ended in rage. You humiliated him. You humiliated all of us. How could you be so heartless? I almost laughed. Heartless. No one called it heartless when they left me out of family vacations. When I was accidentally cropped out of pictures, or when my chair at the table was always just a little farther away. But now, when I took back control, suddenly I was the monster. The group chat lit up again. My cousin Michael wrote, "Can't believe you'd do this. You had one chance to make peace." I replied with a single message, "Peace is not made by swallowing poison." Then I muted the group. He tried to reach me personally. Said he knew it was a messed up thing, that my brother always treated me differently. That he thought I was taking it too far. I replied, "The only difference is that now I get to decide how far." But I wasn't just watching them react, I was also making sure the world saw the full picture. I posted a single tweet that read, "When your half-brother tells you for years that you're not family, don't be surprised when he learns the hard way that family isn't a blood type, it's a choice." I included no names, no tags, no medical details. Just the truth, wrapped in silence. The post exploded. People began replying with their own stories of being the half, the outsider, the forgotten one. Within hours, it became a trending topic. The phrase "family is a choice" was everywhere. And in that chorus of strangers, I found something that my own family had never offered. Validation. He tried to fight back. Told people I had used the situation for revenge. But the irony was cruel. The only evidence he had was that he'd spent his whole life denying I was family. And now he needed that family to survive. People weren't sympathetic. They called him out, said things like, "You don't get to burn bridges and then blame the river. He gave you exactly what you gave him, nothing. Blood doesn't entitle you to a body part." The hospital was overwhelmed with interview requests. They declined them all, respecting privacy. But I knew the silence made the story even louder. I received emails from advocacy groups about donor rights. A podcast invited me to speak about ethical boundaries and emotional abuse within families. I declined. Not because I didn't care, but because I had already spoken loud enough without saying much at all. At home, I kept everything simple. I made tea, I read books. I sat by the window and watched birds, something he never noticed I loved. He thought of me as cold. But I wasn't. I had just spent years being frozen out. Now I was finally thawing. One night I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single page. My brother's handwriting. "You made your point. I hope you can sleep at night." I folded it carefully and placed it in a box, with all the other mementos of things I survived. Then I whispered aloud, "I hope you finally understand what it means to be half. Because sometimes half is just enough, to close a chapter, to draw a line, to end a legacy of silence with." One undeniable answer, no. The legal papers arrived 2 weeks after the cancellation. I recognized the law firm. Old family friends, the kind of people who used to whisper at holidays that I turned out okay, despite the situation. Now they were accusing me of emotional manipulation and medical deception. I wasn't even angry. It was just typical. Of course he would try to turn justice into victimhood. That was always his talent. The claim was absurd that I'd led him on. That I used the hope of a transplant to publicly humiliate him. That I caused him psychological distress. The irony? Every accusation was a mirror. He was just mad at his own reflection. My layer didn't flinch. I had chosen someone sharp, methodical, and entirely unemotional. The same man who'd helped finalize the venue contract months earlier. "You did nothing illegal," he said. "Organ donation is voluntary." His signature on the sibling acknowledgement holds more weight than anything he'll say in court. Still, I had to show up, sit there, face the same man who once told me that I'd never matter. Only now he looked different. Weaker, not physically, though the signs were there, thinner arms, sunken cheeks, a paleness that spoke of machines and tubes, but it was something else too. His confidence had eroded. His voice cracked when he called me manipulative. I almost didn't recognize it. The judge was a woman. Late 40s, firm voice. As she read through the file, I watched her eyebrows rise, then lower. She asked a single question. Did he sign this recognition of siblinghood willingly? My lawyer nodded. Without coercion. Another nod, she turned to him. You acknowledged. A bond you spent years denying. That bond would have saved your life. And now you want to punish the only person who offered it. This court doesn't reward regret disguised as injury. Case dismissed. The courtroom didn't erupt because this wasn't a movie. But I saw it in their faces, the shift. My mother covered her mouth. My aunt stared at the table. My brother wouldn't look at me. For the first time, I think he realized what he had actually lost. Not just a kidney, but something far rarer, a chance. I left without a word, later that night. The story leaked online. Not by me, someone had been in the courtroom and posted the details. It spread quickly. Rejected brother sues over cancelled transplant, loses again. The public had already chosen their side. Now they had legal validation. The memes were brutal. One showed a man holding a broken bridge, captioned, "Shouldn't have burned it, bro." Another had the quote, "Half blood, whole boundary." And my favorite, a screenshot of the court document with bold letters, "You can't sue your way into someone's heart." He tried to respond online, but it backfired. Every time he posted, hundreds of people replied with his own words, not really family. It became a digital echo, one that reminded him of the very sentence he built his life around. And now it was the same sentence that built his cage. Privately, I received messages. From nurses, from old classmates, from strangers. One read, "You did what I never could. You said no." Another, "I didn't know it was okay to walk away from blood." I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about release. Cutting the last thread in a rope that had only ever been used to tie me down, he thought the courtroom would be the scene of his redemption. Instead, it was his reflection. And reflections don't lie. They just show you what you've become. He called me half, but I carried the whole story. And now I was finally done reading it. It started with a single post on a medical ethics forum. Someone had transcribed the court proceedings, highlighting how a biological match doesn't automatically mean an emotional one. From there, it spiraled. Twitter caught fire first. Under the hashtag #halfbrotherwhole nope. Then came the TikToks, the Storytime YouTubers, even a podcast episode titled "The Organ That Could Have Healed, But Didn't." I watched it unfold in silence. I didn't post, didn't comment, didn't clarify. I let the digital storm carry itself. Everyone had something to say. Some called me a monster. Others said I was a hero. But the ones that mattered, the quiet voices, wrote things like, "Thank you for showing it's okay not to bleed for someone who only ever hurt you." Or, "He would have let you die without blinking. You just gave him the same silence." A journalist reached out. Then another. Then 10 more. They wanted a statement. A quote. "Just tell us why you changed your mind," they said. "Give us closure." But closure isn't something you hand out for clicks. It's something you earn through silence, through distance, through survival. So instead of a quote, I posted a letter, typed black and white, no emotion, no drama. Just truth. To whom it may concern, I did not back out of saving my brother. I backed out of pretending he was one. I grew up being told I didn't belong, that my father's blood made me an outsider, that I was less than. Not once did he step in. Not once did he correct them. When he needed something from that same blood. Suddenly I mattered. That's not family. That's convenience. I didn't decline out of cruelty. I declined because for the first time in my life I was being asked to give not just a piece of my body, but a piece of my peace, to someone who spent years tearing it apart. And for once, I said no, not because I don't care, but because I finally do dot about me. Sincerely, the half they never counted. It was short, brutal, honest, and it was shared over 4 million times in 2 days. Celebrities reposted it. Therapists quoted it. People printed it and framed it. One woman commented, "I read this to my mother after she invited everyone but me to Christmas." Another, "I replaced my contact name from my dad with this letter. And through all of it, I remained still. I wasn't chasing attention. I wasn't building a brand. I was just watching the world react to a truth I'd been carrying alone for years." My brother tried to fight back. He posted a video, teary, defensive, calling. Cold and vindictive. But people remembered his old posts. The ones where he joked about real siblings and bragged about family vacations I was never invited to. They resurfaced everything. And every time he tried to twist the narrative, the internet reminded him who started the fire. He deleted all his accounts in less than a week. My mother stopped calling, not because she chose sides, but because for once I didn't need her to. She always said, family finds a way. I just never realized that sometimes the way out is the way forward. I changed my number, moved to a new city, got a new job, still in medicine, ironically. Only now I help people who actually want to live, who actually value connection, and I do it with a calm heart. A steady hand, no regret. Sometimes when I check my email, there are messages from old friends. "Is it really you in that story?" they ask. I just smile, because yes, it's me, the one who was half. The one who became whole by finally saying enough. He always imagined me as someone desperate to prove I belonged. That I would spend my life trying to win scraps of love, of inclusion, of recognition. What he never understood is that rejection, when it comes early and relentlessly, stops hurting. It hardens. It teaches you that begging is just another form of bleeding. So I stopped. I built a quiet life. Not flashy, not perfect, but mine. I live in a small apartment overlooking a park where people walk their dogs at dusk. I volunteer once a week, help with community clinics. I have a garden on the fire escape with 3 pots of basil that refuse to die no matter how much I forget to water them. I don't chase legacy. I don't chase apology. I only chase peace. Sometimes I see him in town, gaunt, slower now, carrying his medication like a reminder he can't escape. The first time we crossed paths after it all, he paused, waiting, maybe hoping for a confrontation. But I didn't stop. I just nodded. Like you might to a stranger you vaguely recognize. Because that's all he ever let me be. The second time, he didn't look at me, just turned away. Shame clinging to him like the hospital wristbands he still sometimes wears. My mother eventually called again. She didn't beg, she just asked, "Was it worth it?" And I said, "He's alive, isn't he?" She didn't respond, maybe because she realized what I meant. That being alive and being entitled to someone else's forgiveness are not the same thing. That my choice wasn't about revenge, it was about autonomy. You see, I didn't ruin
His life, I just stopped saving it. The truth is, I never wanted him to suffer.
I only wanted him to see. To finally understand what it feels like to be treated as disposable. To be made to feel like a tool, a favor, a half person, and he does now. Every beep of that machine reminds him. Every skipped family dinner where no one asks about me. Every news article that still circulates with my letter attached, it's not infamy. It's testimony. They say forgiveness is freedom. But so is clarity. Forgiveness asks you to carry someone else's shame. Clarity lets you put it down and walk away. That's what I did. And today, when people ask what happened to my brother, I say the same thing every time. He made his choice. I just respected it, because in the end, that's all I ever did. I respected the role he gave me, the outsider, the extra, the one who didn't count. He built that wall. I just stopped knocking. And when people hear the story now, on podcasts, in articles, even whispered at family gatherings, they always end with the same question. Would you do it again? Yes. Every Time dot because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone who treated you like less is to finally believe them dot and walk away as more.